Ask Reddit why Trojan zebra. Serious? People of Reddit who have gone through or are going through cancer, what was the first sign that made you go to the doctor? My sister noticed a small painful lump in her breast shortly after having her second child. Doctor diagnosed a blocked mammary gland. A couple weeks later it still wasn't gone. Again doc said blocked gland. Months later it's still not gone and she insists on getting a second opinion. Stage 3 breast cancer. Double mastectomy immediately followed by months of agonizing radiation and chemo only to find out it's now stage 4. She's been stable for a few years but now it's spreading again and we don't know how long we have her. Trying to be as positive as possible. Please women, get a BRCA1 test to find if you're genetically prone to breast and ovarian cancer. My gyno does them for everyone, but most don't. You need to know, because it will sometimes cause you to get breast cancer early, which doctors don't expect and don't test for. My head and neck area became very swollen. At first I thought I was just getting fat, so I worked out a lot and ate better. This did not help. I also went to local clinic and they thought it might be an allergic reaction and gave me steroids, which also didn't help. The thing that finally made me go to the emergency room and not leave until I had an answer is that I started to develop unexplained bruises on my chest. Turns out I had a huge tumor in my chest which had grown around my heart and was compressing the superior vena cava so blood couldn't flow back down from my head. Not great. The good news is that it turned out to be very treatable and I've been cancer free for 11 years now. Funnily enough, it was a totally unrelated lump. Nope, that lump is fine, just a lipoma. However, we found another lump in the corner of your x-ray and we need to biopsy it. My mum had something pretty close to this. Had a stroke, so lots of scans. One of them just caught the edge of something. Tennis ball sized mass in her chest. Whack. Turned out it wasn't anything particularly nasty but it seemed crazy she never knew it was there. Super heavy periods that would last for 10 or more days. Got an IUD to help control bleeding. Actually hemorrhaged so bad the IUD came out. Endometrial cancer, huge tumor in my uterus. Ladies, it's not normal to need a tampon and pad at the same time. It's not normal to need to change them every 10 minutes or even every hour. An average period is 2-3 tablespoons, just for reference. Sorry if TMI. Edited to add. Thank you for the well wishes. I am 1 year Ned, no evidence of disease. I was diagnosed at 40. I wish I could respond to everyone. The main takeaway is if something is not right, keep looking for answers and the right physician. Heavy periods do not usually mean cancer in premenopausal women, but there is no reason to suffer through them. Postmenopausal women should not experience any bleeding. 1 drop and you should go to the doctor right away. The idea that this is TMI is why women struggle with these issues in the first place. Thank you for sharing. My cat found my cancer and bugged me about it until I went to the doctor. My cat has always liked to lay on me and knead part of my body with her paws. For 7 years it was random, various parts of my body. Then for about 6 months she started to focus on one spot on my chest. At first I chalked it up to her wanting to be closer to my face, but after a couple months I noticed that the spot she was focused on had become very tender. Then I felt a small lump in that spot. Due to my relatively young age, it took me a couple of months to convince one of my doctors that it was a potential issue, but eventually I got tested and had a pretty giant tumor in that spot, plus other tumors elsewhere. Yes, Kitty got lots of cuddles, wet food, and greeners as a thank you. I'm in the process of getting diagnosed with what is looking to likely be cancer and my cat has also taken up obsessively licking the affected area. Even if it's not cancer, something's definitely wrong inside my stomach and she just won't leave it alone. They're smart little creatures. I had a persistent pain in the middle of my sternum. Doctors thought it was costochondritis, essentially just inflammation of a joint. I stopped working out and lifting heavy things for 3 months, but it didn't go away. Eventually I started having night sweats and random aches. After I fractured my hip, I got an MRI and biopsy and they diagnosed me with stage IV non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I got chemo and I've been in remission for 5 years. Edit. I'm seeing a lot of people describing a similar chest pain and getting scared. Not all chest pain is cancer and not all cancer is chest pain. I felt a pain in my chest because my tumor happened to be growing there. It could just as easily have grown somewhere else, and my story might have started with describing a persistent pain in the middle of my shin. If you're worried about something, talk to your doctor. Deleted. My dad was acting strange. He looked disheveled somewhat and was telling the same stories. Well, he's 86, that can come with age. But he was also swerving on the road driving and he called me one day to take him to his doctor. Long story short, stage 4 GBM, brain cancer. Had surgery, was okay for a couple of months but was gone a couple months after that. Good part was, had no pain and didn't suffer. Edit. Thank you. I'm sorry that your dad and your family had to live through that. My mom also had GBM and passed 2 years ago at the age of 57. Such a terrible disease. Hugs to you. My dad thought he had the flu and went to urgent care. By the end of the weekend he had started chemotherapy. He had acute myeloid leukemia, made it 6 years though, so not bad. My 25-year-old sister was diagnosed with AML December. She is still going through treatment. It is actual hell. I am her match and we are hoping for a bone marrow transplant soon. Seizures. I got seizures out of nowhere during the night. No history of seizures in my family. Got my head screened and they found what they thought to be a benign tumor. Anaplastic astrocytoma, diagnosed 2 months before my 22nd birthday. Nearing the 5-year mark, though, with no evidence of it returning. My dad had an anaplastic astrocytoma and ended up seizing while in a bee suit in the middle of a parade, so that was awkward. Edit clarity. My brother was 11 when he started experiencing symptoms. He started losing a lot of weight, and when he was playing soccer it looked like he was running through mud and couldn't keep up with everyone else. My parents took him to the pediatrician and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. One day, he woke up and couldn't stop throwing up. When he tried to run to the bathroom, he kept running into the door frame and couldn't walk straight. He said the lights were giving him a headache. We took him to the emergency room and they found that he had a brain tumor, and had emergency brain surgery the next day. We were extremely lucky that they decided to do a CAT scan at the ER. Apparently they don't usually do them on kids. 2 brain surgeries and a year and a half of chemo later, and he is in remission now. As brutal as the therapy can be for kids and for how scary childhood cancer is in general, I will say I'm glad a lot of pediatric cancers have a good response rate to therapy when caught early. I'm happy your brother is doing well. SAR. Unintended weight loss or finding blood where you normally wouldn't. Get yourself to a doctor. What is it about tumors that causes these 2 symptoms? My dad was in bed one night and said he felt like he was drowning, then began coughing up blood. That's terrifying. What kind of cancer did he have? Testicular cancer survivor here. I had a dull pain one day in my right testicle. Didn't think much of it. I then took a shower and my ball felt different. It wasn't smooth. I just felt that something was different. I went to my doctor and asked him to check them to make sure things were normal. He did the check and didn't think things felt off but ordered an ultrasound anyway. I went and did the ultrasound, and I didn't hear what they found. They just asked me to go back for another ultrasound. The next day I got told I had to go to the hospital to see the urologist. Within minutes of meeting the doctor, he told me I had testicular cancer and was having surgery that night. It happened so fast. I caught mine early. Now I tell everyone to feel your balls and know you're normal. Deleted. I felt a pop in my back. It was actually a vertebra breaking. I had severe pain after, and was later diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a blood cancer. That was 5 years ago, and today I am in remission. Yay. Congrats, D. Last year, March 2019, I, male, 35, woke up in the morning to go to the toilet. I was urinating pure, thick blood with little lumps in it. So after a severe panic attack it began to hurt like hell. I was throwing up from the pain. After a day in the hospital and some scans and tests later, they told me to call my parents. So you know you're getting some bad news. It turns out it was kidney cancer. They removed my right kidney. Fortunately no other treatments were needed, and I'm living the best life right now. If the tumor in my kidney didn't started to bleed I would have found out much later. Probably too late. Oh, and also I told myself 2020 was going to be my year. Fuck 2020 and fuck cancer. I was about 12 and I noticed a grey spot in my left eye, so I went to the eye doctor. It turned out to be retinoblastoma. And fast forward about 1 week I had my eye removed and started chemo. And now have a glass eye that has to get redone every 2 years until I was 16. Was it a small opaque spot or more of a translucent patch, if you remember? I have the faintest grey patch in my left eye's periphery and am on the verge of making an eye appointment, lol. I was in a drum line in middle school and we used to do this thing with the drumsticks to sting one another. This kid got me real good on my shoulder blade, and it caused an irritated growth. Doctor told us that it wouldn't go away on its own and would have to be removed. While in surgery to have it biopsy, my mom pointed out another bump on my back, and asked the surgeon if it was the same thing. He replied no, and that it was fine. My mom insisted, asking him to remove it just in case so we wouldn't have to come back, and he did. The second biopsy got infected and I had to go on antibiotics, unknown at the time. The antibiotic prescribed to me I was allergic to, which did not have a good result. Got a call back for a results appointment that just happened to be on my 14th birthday. The surgeon never looked at me or said happy birthday, he just read the results and said sorry before L. I never saw that kid from drumline that hit me again, but I think of him often, because if it wasn't for him I might not be here and I owe him thanks. My nana. She had very loose bowel movements, which had caused her to get dehydrated. Her levels for electrolytes were way out of normal range. She later found out that she had a cancerous mass on her ovaries. They caught it in time and she went through surgery and chemotherapy. Everything is fine now. My stool has been loose for years now and I'm always tired, but I never saw blood and I'm a student, so I figured I'm tired for that reason. Now I'm worried. I was 4. We were visiting my grandmother at work, Target. I still distinctly remember playing with the little dots on a Sprite bottle. I had to potty. So my mom took me to the bathroom. I peed and stood up. While she was helping fasten my pants, I looked at the toilet. It was full of blood. We rushed to the hospital. Turns out I had Wilms tumor. A tumor the size of a large grapefruit had ruptured my right kidney and I was internally hemorrhaging. I was rushed to surgery. I was 4. I didn't want to be a bother to anyone, so I tried as best as possible to hide the pain in my leg. My pre-K teacher noticed I was limping and told my parents about it. I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma and had my left leg amputated through the knee. This October will be 16 years since I ended treatment. I had what I thought was a stroke and found out I have a glioblastoma. I was given 12-15 months and so far I've made it to the 15th month. Keep going. I was diagnosed at 43. For 2 years my gynecologist insisted that I get a mammogram as part of turning 40. I am very small chested, so I thought it was a complete waste of time. In February 2013 I promised my doctor that I would get a mammogram before my next annual appointment. I was diagnosed in February 2014. Stage 2 breast cancer. There was absolutely no signs or indication. No family history. All the way up to the pathology results from the biopsy, I thought it was all a complete waste of time and money. The results came back positive. I have to go on Tuesday and get checked out. Breast cancer runs in my family. Dad's mom had it. About 2.5 weeks ago, I noticed a burning sensation on the underside of my breast. Last week, I noticed a small, about the size of the pad of my thumb, hard lump, among other things. I hope all is going well for you. Edit. I was not expecting this to get as many likes as it did, so I will make use of it with this. To those reading, you know your body better than anyone. If something feels off, best to have it checked out. Could be something, could also be nothing, but it's always important to know. My dad went to the ER after a big bump had formed on his neck overnight. He was prescribed severe rash medication but went back after nothing had worked. Everyone, even the doctors, thought it had been an allergic reaction or some kind of rash, but after testing for other causes, they found that he had had Hodgkin's lymphoma and a 6-inch mass in his chest. It has been over a year, he has finished treatment, and the cancer shows no sign of returning. Edit. Thank you all so much for all the kind words and support. That's wild. Never knew lumps appeared like that. Seen as it was Hodgkin's, I'm guessing the lump itself wasn't actually the cancer but an immune response swollen node? One lump on my underarm, no other symptoms. Had a biopsy and scans and then was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma stage 2B. Turns out I had half a dozen tumors inside me but close together. Had chemo and radio, in remission within 3 months, stopped treatment within 6. Life was on pause for a year. Been cancer free for a year now. Well, I have a benign brain tumor which was diagnosed due to double vision and really bad headaches. I also have had a mild hand tremor for ages. I had radiotherapy 11 years ago and now I have been diagnosed with a low-grade parotid cancer which is a lump on my neck. Soon going to be having radiotherapy for that. Edit. The doctors have decided on proton beam therapy for me. Dry patch of skin on my forehead wouldn't stop scabbing and then bleeding. Decided that was because I couldn't stop picking it. Ignored it for 5 years because I'm 1, that afraid of doctors, and 2, that incredibly stupid. Decided to leave it alone for 10 days and let it heal. It didn't. Finally got sick of worrying about it being basal cell carcinoma and went and got diagnosed. Basal cell carcinoma. It was dealt with pretty easily, but don't be like me. I had almost the exact same experience. It was a tiny little patch on my forehead that would regularly get caught on the towel while I dried my hair or face, then bleed. The doc took a scraping, had it diagnosed, and it came back BCC. On the day I was scheduled to have it removed, he had his assistant prep me for the procedure, then came into the room. After taking a quick look, he stated that the cancerous tissue was so shallow that the test scraping had actually removed all of it, so no surgery was necessary. They then sent me an invoice for approximate $600 for the procedure, which was basically having me sit in the chair. Brother started forgetting words even while looking at object. Could not say them. Could write them or even describe all parts of object but not name, like shoelaces. Soon lost peripheral vision even before he could get to his primary doctor. All that within just 3 weeks. Diagnosed with glioblastoma in February and died in June. Your story hit me hard. My brother was a similar story but kept him for a year. Fuck cancer. My self-diagnosed IBS was actually a tumor and it hemorrhaged. Stage 4 rectal cancer. I beat that, but it is in my liver now, too big to operate. I am living my best life while I can. Man, I wish you good luck. I also diagnosed myself with IBS. What were your symptoms before the blood? My dad had a nipple pulling in that he knew about for several months before mentioning to anyone. He now thinks it may have been a year before he actually mentioned it to my mom, who demanded he see a doctor about it immediately. He was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. After chemo, a double mastectomy, and radiation, he is in remission. I would be remiss if I didn't include this on his behalf. Male breast cancer is not as uncommon as you think it is. Pay attention to any changes in your body and get yourself checked out. Deleted. Doctors are highly dismissive of colorectal cancers in patients under 50. There's a few campaigns to raise awareness of it in younger people, but looks like a slow movement. All the best for your future, man. Edit. Yeah, the bad pun wasn't intentional, ha. Unbearable stomach pain in the middle of the night at 32. 24 hours later, a 15 centimeter cyst was found in my right ovary. 6 weeks later, I was told it was ovarian cancer. 20 days later, I had a complete hysterectomy. I'm 34, in menopause, cured and very lucky. Thank you, NHS. This scares me. I have massive pain every time I ovulate, and a birth control I tried has led to me having terribly painful cysts that regularly burst and stuff too. I have had many scans, x-rays and ultrasounds because of it, and as an American I'm now in huge debt. I'm to the point I just live with it now, but I'm worried about it being something else eventually, and I know I'll wait until it's unbearable before I go in because I can't afford for them to tell me it's just another giant cyst and looks like it's shrinking, won't do much damage if it bursts, and charge me a couple thousand again from several different accounts. But my family is like, well, national healthcare is inferior. Well, we don't have to get rid of private healthcare to have national care, and maybe if it's nothing major I could at least not be scared to go in, because how can I possibly afford more bills? Deleted. Grandfather went through the same shit. Rural man, proud man, never liked go to the doctor, no pain was too much or too frequent. When he finally went, it was too late. I turned my head and noticed a giant lump on my neck in the mirror. It didn't hurt at all, and I hadn't noticed it before. I went to my doctor the next day and bam. Lymphoma. That was 6 years ago, so now I'm officially considered cured. My brother, age 24, had a pain in his lower back, so went to the chiropractor. Didn't help, so he went to a real doctor. Cancerous tumor is blocking the spinal cord. You have less than a year to live. Anyway, my brother lived 3 years more, but the last one was in bed. I'm so sorry. I lost my brother a week before his 24th birthday to all leukemia. He beat it when he was 14, and this time he had to have a bone marrow transplant. It didn't work, and he died a few months later. Deleted. Hoa, this is all too real for me, man. For the past year I've had the same thing. I thought it was just dandruff, so have been treating it myself with anti-dandruff shampoo, but it never goes away 100%. Specifically around my hairline. It burns sometimes, but generally if I resist scratching etc it goes away. Fuck, man. I didn't think this was anything other than persistent dandruff, but this has made me book an appointment to my GP. Thanks, man. Deleted. Had a friend who pulled her back, did it camping. She just couldn't pinpoint exactly how or when. She dealt with it for a month and finally after Thanksgiving decided to go to the doctor to see if they could help. Pancreatic cancer, she passed away 45 days later. Fast forward 10 years, my sister's boyfriend pulled his back. He did pool and pest control work, so he figured he just lifted wrong. After a few weeks I reminded my sister of our friend and pancreatic cancer. She finally convinced him to go get it looked at. He passed away a little less than 3 months later. Pancreatic cancer has a 95% death rate, the one I fear the most. This might sound really strange, but I felt high all the time. Like I was detached from reality. Hard to put into words. Went in, found a tumor, Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's at the same time. Damn it. That's me the last 2 months. Maybe I should get a second opinion. Back in 2017, I had been having back pain for several months. I finally went to urgent care one day when the pain was unbearable. They sent me immediately to the ER. I was admitted to the hospital and was diagnosed with stage IV breast cancer. It had spread to my liver and bones. My life completely changed that day. When faced with dying, I realized that I wanted to live. But for this, I had my suicide completely planned out. I feel like things happen for a reason and things work out the way they are supposed to. I'm a new person today. I spend every day fighting for a life that I wanted to throw away. I'm sorry to hear it. Did your cancer got better? Deleted. What kind of cancer? Severe pain. I was 12 years old and woke up screaming and crying from the pain. Swiftly passed out right after. It felt like a knife had stabbed into my side and was just twisting over and over again. I had already had cancer once before, so my family took me to get an MRI right after I went to school, and they saw a stomach tumor and immediately had me go to the hospital to have it surgically removed. So it was unrelated, not a relapse? I can't imagine having cancer twice as a child, or being your parents. That's so cruel. A lump in my boob I found accidentally in the shower. Nothing else, just the lump. I was fortunate I found it. I was in my early 30s and breastfeeding my second child. Statistically it shouldn't have been me. I'm 5 years from diagnosis and my current status is NED, no evidence of disease, which is the best you can hope for. Check your boobs. Do it regularly. And go to UDR if you find anything you aren't sure about. I had abnormal small amounts of bleeding after intercourses. Went for a pap smear, do it once a year, but went in earlier because of symptom. Turned out I had early stage of cervical cancer. After few surgeries later, with one ovary removal, partial cervix removal and lymph nodes out, I am fine. Most of the patients I've seen had some weird gradual symptoms onset that they either ignored or just assumed was normal, or at least their normal diet. Fatigue despite not changing much in their life. Weight loss that was attributed to I'm never really hungry anyways. Weird headaches. Changing bowel habits, pencil thin stool, blood in stool, etc. Moral of the story is don't ignore chronic symptoms. Please see your doc. Moral of the story sometimes is also don't ignore your patients. Seems there are a lot of cries for help and a lot of doctors ignoring dismissing them. Patients often get treated like hypochondriacs, but their reality is real. This can often cause people to not go see their doc, unfortunately. Seizures in my sleep. Had been living a very healthy lifestyle while in my first year of law school, and then all of a sudden I started getting seizures in my sleep. I immediately went to my primary care and was sent to the hospital for scans. Results came back the same day and was told to go to the neurologist ASAP, and that's when I was told about the tumor growing in my brain. Edit. I'd like to add that I'd had migraine since I was like 17, but my GP told me it was probably because of periods, since that was usually the case with women. It wasn't until I had my first grand mal seizure that he took things seriously. If you have chronic migraines, please for the love of God suggest an MRI. Just to rule out whether it's a tumor or not. Nothing. I got my first routine mammogram because I was 42. I had zero signs. The mammogram caught the very early stages of an aggressive breast cancer caused by the ATM gene, which is common to people of Norwegian ancestry. I have a tiny sliver of Norwegian. No family history of cancer, breast or otherwise, except the occasional skin damage sort. If I'd gotten the mammogram 2 weeks earlier, nothing would have been visible. I'd have waited until next year's mammogram, which would have revealed a metastasized, likely fatal breast cancer. I had my mammogram in August, my biopsy to confirm it in October, at which point the 2 little dots had turned into 2 clusters, bilateral mastectomy in December, and I went back into the classroom in the first week of January. Because of the timing, I did not need any chemo, preventive meds, or treatment beyond the mastectomy. And that was my first and last mammogram. I was passing menstrual blood clots the size of tennis balls. I had uterine cancer. I was 32 and childless. Had to have a complete hysterectomy. My mother began having numbness in her hand and that became more frequent and it led to loss of control. She was a heavy smoker and always coughed, but apparently the cancer started in her lungs. My aunt had chronic pneumonia and then they realized she had cancer. This was 7 years later and they were identical twins. Both smoked. My mother was also a drug, speed, user though. My cousin had throat cancer and that was diagnosed pretty early and she beat it. She was having recurring throat infections and loss of voice. But cancer disqualifies you from organ transplants. They all lived in the same house. I am now selling that house. Had a different type of discharge down south. Cervical cancer early stages. Had a big chunk of my cervix cut out. Get annual pap smears no matter what and am hypervigilant of any changes down south. Have your kids get the HPV vaccine. Trust me. My brother was 2 when he was diagnosed. It started with zero energy. Instead of playing or wanting to be outside or normal toddler high energy, he wanted to nap on the couch. Then he started throwing up because of smells from my stepmom's cooking. Eggs especially, which used to be his fave. Then he was dizzy constantly and had a hard time walking, which previously wasn't a problem. The dizzy made him throw up more. Stage 4 brain cancer, 2% chance of living. Massive brain surgery and he's 23 and still with us. His cognitive ability was severely affected due to tumor location, so I'd say cognitively he's more 13 than 23. He'll never be able to drive a car or have kids, but he's happy and he's the hardest working 23-year-old I know. It just sucks for him because he's smart enough to know he's different than peers his age, but cognitively damaged enough that he can't make himself fit in.